Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and all of you are co hosts here on the channel. Thank you very much for being here. Today, this is. Uh, this is one of my favorite days of the week, Thursday. Not because it's Thursday, but because it is Third Pillar of Exploration Thursday. And in the role playing community, usually the first two pillars are often emphasized, whether it be the first pillar, usually referring to combat and all of the m- mechanisms involved in combat, and the second pillar dealing with social interaction, role playing. But the third pillar of exploration, is one that is kind of atrophied. We really don't have a clear definition of what it is. Because it covers so many things in the RPG community, especially in Dungeons and Dragons. But today we are going to talk about much of the third pillar of exploration when it comes to knights and chivalry and that sort of thing. Now, of course, this subject came about because of the release of the movie The Green Knight, and I couldn't let it go. I know I promised I would talk about monstrous races, and I even made the thumbnails and everything for that. So we will talk about that next week. I apologize for the delay, but today we're going to talk about knights and chivalry and competition and tourneys and things, and without really changing many rules, if we need to at all. I think there's a place in which we can a sandbox, if you will, where we have building blocks to make a world in which, if we wanted to run a game using knights and armor and chivalric codes and things of that nature, that there's a place for it. Now, the first thing I'll say is that within the rules of fifth edition already, and it's kind of tucked in, probably in between where hit points and damage is located, that players have the option, if they are, having some kind of combat with a monster, to decide whether it's lethal or not. In other words, if they drop a monster 0 hit points, the player has the choice to murder kill that creature, or they are just they are for lack of a better term, knocked out. But in our context, we can still use the I have 38 hit points, and when I'm dropped to 0, we don't have to go to death if we still want to have combat, we still want to use the rules. But if we're in a world of a noble conflict, duels, competition, maybe there's a vast tournament in which the players are one faction of a knight's order, and they have to do competitions with 5 or 6 other nation states out there, that maybe just when they go to 0 hit points, they've given up. When the ogre that's blocking the bridge won't let the PCs pass, and one of them steps forward, and the ogre demands to have a competition. Maybe when you drop to 0 hit points, that's where the person just gives up. It if effectively removing the threat without death and destruction laying in its wake. And maybe the difference between the player characters and their adversaries is their adversaries do slay them, or maybe there is a um, role playing doesn't need to stop when the dice are rolled. Maybe there's an enemy that wants to be slain because they would rather die than give up their because to them it would be dishonorable to give up. And in that space, in that little space where normally we just ignore, 0 hit points, I guess the ogre's dead, move on, step over the dead body. Maybe in this context, hey, what's up there, Mufa? Maybe in this context, the idea is that yes, players can basically beat ass, but the world changes and their actions change the dynamic of the things they come in contact with. And so 0 hit points takes on a new meaning when the players decide to, and how they decide to dispatch their enemies. And that may change the nature of how their knightly order deals with other nation states, other nobles, the populace, and that kind of thing. And I think there's a great space in there. Now, moving on to more explorative elements when it comes to the cinematic style of nights and tournaments and festivals and competition and duels and things of that nature, we could really pull upon the idea of going on a quest and being challenged in the sense of, if the players come upon a sphinx or something, and the sphinx has a riddle, or the players are supposed to meet the sphinx, who's supposed to give them, six tests of strength or courage or something. Then we can start pulling out the classic Grimtooth's traps or something, because maybe there's a dungeon specifically built to test the player characters. And so the ridiculousness of it doesn't make sense for a dungeon to have sliding, pouring, dripping, crushing traps and whatnot. Maybe the reason it exists is literally to test the player characters. And I think that's yet another way we can recontextualize the things we already have without, tossing the baby out with the bathwater and go, oh, well, maybe the dungeon does exist, and the dungeon doesn't even need to exist in a in a physical sense, it meaning, like, I don't know, the sphinx, opens the portal to this place of challenge, once every 100 years or something, or only the most noble can come to the sphinx and when it present your coat of arms or banner or something like that. Red dice. If you wish to gain XP, you must answer my riddles 3. Yeah, and also, you guys know I've always said this, and this mantra exists throughout role playing. It's like, don't have your puzzles and riddles lock the front door. If you literally have a front door and the players can only get through it by solving the riddle, don't do that. Well, but what you could do is give them a riddle or a puzzle, push them through the door, and then maybe the answer to that riddle or puzzle helps them navigate this, an air quotes, dungeon of sorts. Now, the dungeon need not be a or the I'm sorry, the quest or the challenges need not be in a dungeon underground. Much like the Green Knight was challenged from traveling from A to B. And I've always said that, the concept of like the 5-room dungeon or something, when it comes to exploration and travel, it's the same thing. Instead of walls, you just have regions. Oh, you're in the valley. Okay, that's one room. And then we're on the plains. That's the second room. And we're going through a forest. That might be the third room. And very easy to do that. And especially if you have, like, for me, I'm old school. I'll go 3x5 cards and just pull one out and just keep on going. Yeah. Let's see. AG, hey, what's going on there? Says it can be Hero Quest, a recreation of a heroic act that you must perform to gain the favor of the gods. Exactly. And what a great way to preload the dangers that your players may involve with, right? If your players are, let's go like very low tier 1, they're like first to fourth level, and you want to incorporate like some of your favorite really big bads like pit fiends, dragons, um, liches, or something like that. Maybe those evil entities are in existence for the sole purpose to challenge heroes openly, to find ones that are worthy enough to challenge their right of power or something, right? And you could be very upfront with it, like, no, you'll never defeat, at your level, you'll never defeat the pit fiend. And the pit fiend might be like, yeah, you're not on my level, but let's see really how good you are. I've destroyed your ancestors or something like that, and let's see if you're brave enough to overcome the block, and fill in the blank. And you could even, like I said, preload, foreshadow the events that might happen in front of them, at least on the surface level. But it might be challenging something else, like, oh, your job is to defeat the troll, but there's an innocent person that needs to be saved. Do you ignore the troll to save the innocent victim? And that might be the the answer to the puzzle, if you will, right? Red Dice Diary says, entirely agree. In my experience, adventures, quests, etc., with a single point of failure never end well. No, no. Which brings us to the idea of creating problems but not solutions. So the the troll that blocks the bridge and says you got to pay a toll and challenges the heroes if they, you know, lie, cheat, steal, convince, pay the toll, you know, do single combat or something like that, or trick them or whatever. You know, if it makes sense for them to solve the issue, sure, why not? Just let them go. Also, when it comes to uh, uh, what I love about tournaments and like classic jousting and knights in armor and things. Of course, again, zero hit points does not necessarily need to be death. It could just be the end of the conflict without changing any of the rules at all. And the drama comes in when you defeat your enemies, especially if they're like they're assholes. You know, they're talking out the side of their neck about how they're going to defeat you, or there's a knightly order that's never quite had the best warriors in it at all, but you need to keep but we need to keep them in favor, so the players pretend to lose maybe and throw a fight, or they're there to train some of the younger members, the squires or something, or they're supposed to perform for the crowd. So maybe you start incorporating other skill effects like, hey, you're going to have to make performance checks while being in the tourney and fighting and such. And so, yeah, you can defeat your enemies, but you're going to have to make it look good too. And that, you know, one player's like, I don't have any performance skill, I just know how to beat ass. And sure, you won, but you don't look good, you just look brutal. And maybe the people kind of turn against you, whereas maybe someone with a lot more performance but less sword skill makes it look really good, you know, especially if they're reenacting ancient battles, or they are confronting enemies like AG mentioned about, there could be set up by spirits or ancient ancestors, or like the gods or demigods or something. Maybe they put the players on the exact same quest that their ancestors went on, and like, your ancestors failed, let's see if you can do it. And the players might even have little clues to along the way, like, oh, my grandmother once told me, and they have a clue, and it says she told me to, you know, I don't know, step thrice and look to the east, and then blah blah blah, you know, there will be a great beast or something, and then that solved that. Oh, it's the owl bear, that's what happened, you know. And of course, at the end of some of these quests or something, maybe they do meet their own ancestors, or, you know, which might be, you know, you gained a character level, right? You do the milestone thing. Also, with challenges, this is a great opportunity for us to literally place things outside the box that normally physics would not allow a thing to happen. Like, for example, in in uh, something that was written for Critical Hit Publishing that I had a hand in was called The Adventure Keys. And these were like 1 to 3 page adventures. And one of them I did write up was called The Tourney. And in it, there was the tournament of wood, stone, and iron. And they were basically easy, middle, and hard skill checks in a tournament that the player characters could all be involved in, whether they had martial skills or magical skills and things of that nature. And one of them was a very simple. It was, you had like a what I refer to, try to describe as building blocks like a Tetris cube, and the blocks were made of wood, stone, and iron. And, you know, the wood ones were a little bit easier to lift, medium lift, and then super hard to lift. And then you had to figure out how they link together. And then you had to organize the group to get the pieces to fit together and whatnot. And it was basically different skill checks where you had to use strength, and you also had to use sleight of hand, and you know, you also had to use investigation skills. And so you could start pulling these skills out of, you know, basically these so-called useless skills or dump skills in fifth edition and make them quite important. Like, for example, the players could be in a social situation and they're going through a rich noble's place, and they have to um, describe to the to in the party about a very a historical event. So maybe they have to make a history check, or classically knights were Christian, but in a fantasy world there can be all kinds of religions, and maybe they have to talk about a religious act or an important saint or something, and so they have to make an arcana check or a religious check. With medicine skill, maybe there are sick individuals, and the player characters need to. The quest in many ways is, yeah, they're sick, but what are they suffering from? How can we help them? Maybe they have to help out herbalists, or they've been the people have been afflicted with a curse or something, and the players have to take that curse upon themselves, and they have 6 days hence to get rid of the curse and go on a quest of some sort. And mind you, sure, in you know our modern context, it's player characters defeat monsters, take their stuff. But in a world shaped by honor and glory and a chivalric code, maybe a lot of the monsters are very, in a strange kind of way, no matter how brutal they are, maybe they also have their own codes. Like, hey, if you can, the great beast is like, I will hunt you for 3 days, and if you survive my hunt, you'll get some great gift at the end of it. Much like, you know, um, convincing the leprechaun to trick the leprechaun to get the gold at the end of the rainbow, or and so on and so forth, right? And there also might be even other little things. For example, we have the classic um, gentleman knight who's looking for the favor of the young lady, and he upon his armor, she hands him a rose and he puts it on his armor, and how minor of effect that might be might change the dynamic going forward. Like, um, does the d- you know is the gift of the lady something from an evil hag, and now that touch from the evil hag has affected the knight, but the knight really can't say anything in public because that would just show how blinded the knight was. But the knight has to reveal that the hag has done this to him, and the hag like whispers in the ear like, "Ha, I've got you. Are you going to tell everybody who I am, or are you going to let me go? Because if you let me go, I will make sure that the populace isn't hurt or something." And you kind of play with those, with the social parts of it, and then that might then bring about certain interactions such in the physical world. Red Dice says one of the concepts I like in Worlds Without Number, which I've been listening to a number of reviews on Worlds Without Number. It's written by the same person that did Stars Without Number. Anyway, one of the concepts I like in Worlds Without Number is that there are supernaturally potent heroes called legates. In order to gain that power, you have to do an epic quest. I love it, and what a great way even to, like, if you don't want to. I think there's been a little bit of a complaint that magic items can kind of are fifth edition doesn't take into account magic items when it comes to numeric power, but being blessed, you could just go, oh, you're blessed for 9 days, and give the character, I don't know, they pick up their longsword and now it's a frost brand and it goes away after 9 days. Like, these things could be temporary gifts. You've been kissed upon the cheek of the queen of something or whatever kingdom or whatever, and that gives you the power to, I don't know, cast a bless spell or guidance or resistance or something before you go off on your quest and whatnot. Mike Gould says samurai were known to be skilled in poetry, calligraphy, and horsemanship. In a world where you expect competitions in archery and swordsmanship, inverting expectations to these fields would be handy. Exactly. And what a great way to prevent min-maxing, because if your player is expected to be, physically proficient, archery, horsemanship, because archery would be a particular skill, animal handling, whether it's little animal whether it's the mounted combat, doesn't need to be horses. It could be elephants, camels, giant snakes, scorpions, or something, right? Whether it's the swordsmanship, or all kinds of weapons, from all go through the gamut of martial weapons. Whether this is a you want to go very traditional knights with jousting and lances, or you want to put twists on it with different cultures from around the world and ones you've made up. And then also the social aspects of things, like with the samurai, known in poetry, calligraphy, dancing, flower arranging, painting. So you could start enhancing things like sleight of hand, acrobatics, performance skill, persuasion skills, and whatnot. And I think that would be kind of cool. That'd be kind of cool. You could even enhance more intellectual skills and things, like maybe they're dead monsters and the PCs have to use medicine skill because they've dissected a I don't know the body part of a purple worm or something, and the players are supposed to know about the inner workings of a lot of the monsters that they fight, and they're being challenged on it. Uh, Mike says a hag playing the part of a lady is a great hook, especially a night hag, since their change is polymorphic, not illusory. Exactly, and like Morgan Le Fay, in this world, it, you would have to have players on the same page. But maybe the point of it is not to, oh, it's evil, murder, kill the evil thing. Maybe the evil hag has always been a lady, right? Maybe everyone has suspected that the lady in wait, who's very beautiful and kind and whatnot, maybe she's always had this like dark turn to her, and the PCs already know it up front, but they also know you can't assassinate this woman, right? Maybe the king is just like, oh, he's heard about these rumors, but you best do what she says, and the PCs are like, ooh, okay, we have to follow instructions, but we can't tell a lie, but it might be the downfall of our nation state, but the king would kick us out, and so if the players embrace that aspect of it, I think it'd be really cool. Red Dice says, I know back in the 3.5 days, there was a swords and sorcery Excalibur setting book that gave heroes an honor stat and very much focused on chivalry in that Arthurian style. Fifth edition has honor as well, if in the DMG, honor and renown, I believe it's called. And that might be another thing to reward players with, like not just getting a higher honor stat and using that stat to roll for things, but unlike navigating through a dungeon, maybe things are revealed to the players, rewards are revealed to the players when their honor stat goes up, but the actions they take keep getting their honor hit over and over again in these competitions or tournaments or duels or challenges. And so the goal is the players need to keep getting their honor stat up. The only downfall I see to that would be the dungeon master would be making the distinction of what is honorable and what isn't. And instead, what I would do is, like milestone XP, as long as a player solved the problem, no matter how they solved it, I would just grant them the honor for it. Anyway, Mike Gould says a knight might ask for a lady's favor. This favor is usually a ribbon or other accessory that would be part of her attire. A great hook might be that this favor causes disadvantage in combat. Ooh, ooh, but those who win with a favor get double the credit or honor. Yeah, yeah. Especially if what we would consider to be big bad evil monsters are part of the chivalric entourage. Like maybe there is the ladies in wait are known to be hags or have hag like powers. The population knows this, everybody knows it up front, but they're part of society. Like, for example, maybe I'm just making this up, like the hill folk. Maybe the hill folk are really hill giants, and everybody just assumes them to be hill giants. Or maybe they transform, like you just in your world, like, oh, the hill folk, everybody looks at them like, oh, they're the dirty folk, but they are part of the landed, they are part of the landed nobles or something, and every time they fight, they take off their cloaks and their hide, their I don't know, leather jerkins or something, and they turn into these beasts and fight in the tourneys, and they're just known to be that way. And they don't have to be lycanthropes, but maybe they are, and people just accept them like, oh, they've come with their wolves again. Here they go, and everyone just rolls their eyes, like they're not afraid. They're just like, oh, it's those people again. You know, Pelora says this makes me think of the pentathon. The pentathon, 5 events based on skills needed by the ideal soldier. The modern one is running, swimming, pistol shooting, fencing, and equestrian show jumping. And what a great way! Like again, there's a lot of stuff like using. I'm always pointing to 5th edition, world's most popular role playing game, and some of the complaints are there are things in the game that are useless. They don't have to be. Why not have a ton of like, oh, here's combat, but in between combat, you're going to have to make uh, uh, animal handling checks to maneuver around to get to another position where combat happens again. Like we've seen, well, what is it in Samurai with Zen archery? They ride on horseback at full gallop, using their thighs to control their horse while at the same time shooting targets with a bow or something. Why not have something like that? And listen, classic jousting, why not? You know, maybe there is a grand wizard that somehow summons a real dragon, and the PCs have to joust the dragon, and everyone's like, you know, people are like throwing flowers or rotted vegetables if they don't like it, and it's a real dragon, and there's real jousting going on. Although you could still have jousting with other knights, and the jousting could be on griffins or hippogriffs or what are some other great flying things? Rocks, giant bats, pterodactyls, whatnot. There's an old mid to late '80s game called Joust that I really love to play in the old arcade games. Yeah, we could take this and twist it up and everything. Michael says, consider the original Disney animation of Sleeping Beauty. Yeah. Having Fae at court was normal. Now imagine if someone like Maleficent were not treated were not treated disrespectful, but was instead invited as an honored guest. Exactly. Exactly. There's your night hag. And of course, listen, evil doesn't mean like, I'm evil. I'm just gonna hurt people all the time. No, evil is insidious. Evil's like, yeah, I'm going to give you gifts. I'm going to give you gifts until you can't deny my presence here, right? Like that's always the case. It's much like it's like the red light districts in many cities. Sure, people don't want drugs and prostitution and crime in their cities, but you also need a release valve. And especially when it comes to uh, nightly orders, when it comes to bloodlines, when it comes to landed titles. Titles are very important, and faith is another thing, and just power. You know, of course, on the when they're your enemy, everyone's like, "Oh, we hate the hags," but when they're in your court, you're like, "Yeah, they're helping us out." You know, yeah, of course. Yep. Absolutely. Mike says, and hill folk of the Furbolg, they take a smaller shape when attending court. Exactly. And you could narratively, could you have humans that transform into other things in your world just because they do? Of course. Again, Fae was always invited to the courts. Why do we have to limit ourselves to Fae? Maybe there literally are fiends that come to the courts, and everyone knows. How do I explain this? The the idea that fiends are bring temptation is not only not an enemy, but it's almost a desire, as if to say, look how we resist our temptations. And or maybe let's go with the classic 7 deadly sins, although those sins tend to be more Christian oriented. You could make up your own sins or modify them. I went down a rabbit hole one time with a little Google flu looking for other modifications of the classic 7 deadly sins. But maybe people who fall into one or more of the sin categories become classifications of monsters in the books. Like, for example, your goblinoids might be from people who are very vengeful, and maybe greed. They become like dragon like, and maybe if they are lustful and resist chastity or something, maybe they become some other kind of monster, like fey creatures or something. Whatever, so on and so forth. I don't know. Sloth, they become oozes. I don't know. But anyway, you get the point, right? And maybe people do have a physical transformation uh, of sorts. They live on the outskirts or exiled, or maybe people don't want to. When someone's a noble child has succumbed to the temptations, people don't want, the public doesn't want that known. You know, Mike says in an actual noble or royal court, there are certain social rules. Yeah, a titled and landed individual like Maleficent would be allowed to participation out of respect, least the risk of a declaration of war. Oh hell yeah! And um, hiding things. The it's the what's the way to describe it? Um, Everyone would like the Maleficent idea, right? Everyone knows this person is courting powers that are beyond mortal kin, but the population can't say anything about it. If you're not noble or you don't have a landed title or something, you can't say anything about it. You just do what you're told, even if you are speaking behind everyone's back, like Downton Abbey or something. Um, but the other part of that too is maybe the players who earn titles, now they have a responsibility in this world as well. Hey, you're a landed noble. You must go to court and you must deal with this in a social manner. Whereas people who are of a lesser stature can use violence. There was that as well. Hey, as a knight, you were expected to show mercy, but if you weren't a knight, you didn't have to show mercy. And that would be kind of cool to have different rules where the players, the further up the ladder you go, the more restrictions you have. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool. Red Dice Diary says, "Love the Furbolg idea. Gives you an opportunity to do the whole judge me by my size, do you moment." Yeah. In the Green Knight, it was like, hey, strike me, and in a year and a day, I'll come back and strike you back. How do you do that in the game? How do you let a player do that? Was that Green Knight a troll or something? I don't know. Maybe there really is no game mechanic for that. Maybe you just let the person strike them down with his axe and he picks his head up, and he's like, yeah, you can't kill me. Mike says a tourney might be the one time per year where an Asimar and Tiefling representation of their outer plane regents might attend court. Exactly. They might be invited and have discussions, and it might even be a noble challenge to parlay verbally with fiendish powers. And the angelic hosts are like, this is the year where we don't have any physical war, but we will come to the tournaments and see who's best and whatnot. Red Dice says the whole greed equals dragons does give an intriguing new possibility for dragonborn origins. Oh yeah, and the dragonborn, you might not be born that way. Maybe you become a greedy person, starts to have scales, and they start wearing long sleeve shirts because they got scales in their arms or something, or they're like hoarding their ill gotten gains, and they're like telling their family go away, and their eyes turn red and they breathe a little bit of fire, and like he's becoming greedy. How could you tell? The leathery wings on his back? I don't know. Mike says they might have banners like the sun and the brand, a hot poker. Having unusual participants means having new and unusual heraldry. Ooh, I wonder what that would look like. Non-human heraldic orders, like you very much. Recontextualizing goblinoids would be pretty interesting. Maybe the goblinoid hordes are people who've been exiled because of their so-called sins, but at the same time, so the world could be punishing people because of their sins completely unfairly. And the people who have committed these sins are like, yeah, but it's unfair. We're not evil. We just made a mistake. It was just a simple mistake. Like, why aren't you forgiving us? Or why can't we be forgiven? The only way we could turn back to our normal selves is to be forgiven, but they've been kicked out. And so now they are by virtue of society turned into these goblinoid hordes, but they have their own heraldry. Maybe they've come together or something. PCs need to fight them, but at the same time, the PCs are like, they're actually kind of innocent. So he stole bread, whatever. He's trying to feed his family. Nope, too bad, bugbear. Zamara says, hey, I saw the link you left in Discord, Zamara. Anyway, Z says, it could be part of honor. Those with honor will never choose wrong, unlike those who lack it. So a group of ladies offering their hand might hide a hag or two, or okay, a knightly challenge might be a furbolg or troll or even dragon in disguise. The knightly order searching for knightly order searching for pages might be a tribe of ogres, orcs, or goblins. Yep, absolutely. And why not? Like for example, a player might have a hobgoblin as a squire, not necessarily young, but maybe in training to overcome the sins of their past to become humanoid or throw off the goblinoid. Like there's a physical representation of the social order in this world, and people just they're just like, oh yeah, of course the goblinoids are in the black market region because they're greedy and they're backstabbers and they lie and cheat or something. And that'd be kind of messed up because they're like, because on one hand, the physical representation is being is literally being stereotypical. You're being stereotyped as something, but the people are not who they really are, and they aren't stereotypes. That'd be weird, but it'd be kind of cool. Mike says, now I'm seeing an Asimar, Tiefling, and Elf Druid discussing politics over wine. Yeah, that would be awesome. That'd be very awesome, right? You know, someone the Asimar gets the Tiefling to like explode with a little bit of hellfire, just a little bit off the horns or something, and everyone's like, "Ooh!" They're like they're all a Twitter at the table. Texting. Anyway, they're all a Twitter at the table because they got the Asimar to like say blasphemous, hellish, rebuking words that you're not supposed to say at court. And the tiefling's like, oh shit, I didn't mean to say that. And everyone's like, ooh, I heard it. Oh no. I I think that would just be awesome. I find that hilarious and intriguing. I love it. Red Dice Diary says you could put an interesting spin on the whole fairy playing a regular paying, excuse me, a fairy paying a regular tithe to hell. Perhaps when they pay the tither, the human kingdom is chosen as a neutral ground. Ooh, that might be interesting. Maybe loved ones and warriors are returned from hell to at least periodically return back to the physical realm to try to gain their honor back. And maybe that's the way someone can move their soul from the pits of hell up into the higher planes by competing in the tournaments. And on one hand, they want to win, so maybe they try to cheat a little bit. But on the other hand, in order for them to really do it, they have to be honorable. And that would be a great way for the players to have to work with evil creatures and entities to go, look, you can't stop, you can't cheat. You'll never leave hell if you cheat. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to get out of here. Like, yeah, I hear you, but you don't want to do that. Red Dice Diary says you could come up with some cool terminology if people with extremes of emotions actually transformed. The dragon fever is upon him. Yes, that was a. Is that a tokenish thing or a real thing where people refer to other human beings by the monsters that they represented? Like, man, she's being very trollish right now, right? And they start to slowly change, and people see them changing, but they're not alarmed by it. They're just like, Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, of course, they're like 9 feet tall. Yeah, I don't. That's not what I'm noticing though. Wow. Mike says, now imagine a tourney being won by a hobgoblin samurai and the protests by goodly folk, despite the clear honorable behavior by the victor. Now you have drama. Exactly. Exactly. The what if the so-called traditionally evil monsters compete honorably and they are brought into the court? A giant ass minotaur kneels down before and is knighted or something like that, and is able to take a lady, and maybe the lady is like, hey, that dude was a badass, okay. And the court is like, what have we done? And the minotaur is like, oh, and maybe the minotaur is like, no, I want to fight for my people. You guys have been kicking us in the teeth forever, but maybe if we compete in a tourney, that might be the cool thing. As a matter of fact, as a side note, in the Adventure Keys written by Critical Hit Publishing, me, in the tourney, there are like little story hooks, and one of them is the evil races are trying to compete honorably in a tournament, and then there's a group of noble knights that have been cheating because they need to keep the nobles. Um, they need to be in that position so they can get money for the war against the evil goblinoids that have been harassing the countryside. And if they lose, they're not going to have favor anymore. They're not going to fund their war effort and stuff like it. And so, yeah, it kind of flips the idea that. Mike says Asimar heraldry might incorporate light elements that glow. Tiefling heraldry is made from carved and welded metal. Ooh, goblin heraldry might be all organic materials and so on. How cool would a heraldic symbol be that moves? Maybe illusory, or somehow like, hey, the banner's got a dragon's head on it, but it actually breathes fire a little bit. When you take a look at it, the eyes move and they follow you or something. Neutral ground is a great idea. I like the idea of a neutral ground as well. Whether it could be magically enforced, which is not really necessary. Maybe it's just socially enforced, like the Olympics. Oh, this country is going to host a tournament, and everyone comes there and knows not to do the bad thing. Michael says, or there might well be a random draw for teams during certain events. This would place possible enemies on the same side. I like that. I like that a lot. Like, for example, you could have a mounted polo style game where everyone's on mounted, everyone's mounted. You're riding on these animals, so you have to do your animal handling checks and things like that. And then maybe the competition is you have to go over like rolling fields and through tunnels, and maybe they fly. You have to navigate through tight passes or something. And also at the same time, you might have to carry something like or it might be like a relay race or what have you, or you everyone has to run to get to us to get the blue flower at the top of the mountainside or something. And in order to do that, you have to have a team, and the team is you might have to hand over the very important item to a so-called untrustworthy um, ally on your team, knowing you have to work together. That might be the way. Maybe the tournament has been the thing that's been keeping the blood war at bay. Maybe it's been the tournament. All right. Michael says a victor might have the choice of lands, titles, deeds, or arranged marriages. Thus, beings like Asimar, half elves, half orcs, and tieflings are born. Also, I don't know how mechanically you would do this, but maybe lands and titles, deeds, boons, gifts, and things could be tied to character capabilities. Like, hey, the only way you can get to fifth level is you must have, I don't know, three landed titles, three lands, and you've been granted two titles, and they correspond. Like the only reason everyone knows you're fifth level because of your deeds and functions. So in this world, there's a mechanical representation of kings. Like maybe a king isn't really an NPC. Maybe a king is like a CR 17 capable individual, and the ladies in court are literally C8 individuals because of their positions in the world, not necessarily anything they've done, but because of the position they hold, it is automatic that they are granted a certain thing. Like that, maybe that's why the children that they have the capabilities that they do. Like, for example, the people that live in the Five Kings Mountain, they are all some combination of like ignoring the names. They are all some combination of like hill giants, earth elementals, maybe like clay and stone golems. What else? What are some other things? Snurf Leblin, dwarves, drow elves. Like, but they're not those races. They're just people that live there. But in an instant, they meet that knight on the road or something, and the knight takes his helmet off, takes the cloak off, and then you just see stone like go all over their body, and they have a big giant club, and they just start trying to smash the PCs. And when they are taken out, that last hit takes them out, and the stone crumbles, and it's just their human body underneath it. Especially if you wanted to have a humanocentric world, like there are no elves there, or let me see, there are no elves in the traditional sense, and there are no orcs in the traditional sense, but they are humans physically transformed by their actions, in their behavior, in their blood, and maybe their ancestors as well. Red Dice says the moving heraldry makes me think of the old cartoon Visionaries. Ooh, Knights of the Magical Light. They had moving animal heraldric. I forget what IIRC means. All right, guys, we've come to the end. I promised myself that I would have to cut this short, and I will. Tomorrow, of course, is Future Friday. We're going to talk about colonizing space and making, because we were talking about knights and honor and chivalric codes, but instead tomorrow we're going to talk about player characters as colonists, and creating colonies, being a head of colonies, and deciding the politics, the government, the manipulation and survival of colonists in general, and then making that a story element. So, sorry. Lastly, Mike says the Victory Blossom idea is great. There might be challenges up the mountain like riddles, puzzles, yep, artistic challenges, and combat. Having the right team is essential, especially if you need someone's very good at performing, or maybe someone has to, you know, play a certain song to keep the earth elementals from knocking you off the mountainside, and the hill giants are like, trying to carve something into the stone, and the PCs need to help them carve this special emblem into the stone or something like that. Or, I don't know. Zamar says in the concept of heraldry that moves, that kind of things would probably be common in a high magic world. Oh, hell yeah. Or even living heraldry, the kingdom of the north represented by a living Pegasus. Ooh. Ooh. That makes me think of another thing. Michael says, even if your team member is the hated tiefling, he's a genius with riddles. Yep. Yeah, you might not like him, but why the hell not, And maybe that pit fiend is like, that's that's my nephew. Go on, nephew, right? And yeah, and what a great excuse for your pit fiends, rakshasa, hags, all these evil things being non-violent but maneuvering around in this world. Everybody knows that the cloaked the rakshasa with the backwards facing hands or something like that always has a silver tongue and is always trying to convince you, but maybe this person also has coffers filled with gold. They know every secret, and everybody goes to the person, and this person's in the court. The Rakshasa's in the court, maybe not even hiding themselves. Right? They've got the tiger head and the cloak and the gemstones and whatnot, and everyone's just like, oh, here he goes again. And the Rakshasa sits at the table, and then the next day the Rakshasa doesn't show up, but there's a lady from a distant country, and everyone's like, I wonder if it's so and so. Like, shh, don't say anything, because if you're wrong, But I think it is a Rakshasa. Like, yeah, you can look stupid if you want to. I'm not saying anything. That what a great way. Doppelgangers being in the court and whatnot. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Trying to figure it out, and but at the same time, you really can't say anything. But then on the other hand, you're like, I know the doppelganger's here, and other people know the doppelganger's here too, but they don't know who's the doppelganger, and they're trying to guess. Or maybe the doppelganger plays a game. Yeah, the doppelganger plays a game like, guess who I am? And the other nobles are like, "Oh, you got me." Yep. Mike's like, "Right, eternal, shiny, and chrome." Guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. We'll get into the call to order about in the background. You see the word clave. That's because the Creators Conclave is live now. You will be getting more information about what the Creators Conclave is about. But for right now, I do have to go. You guys take it easy. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Finding the doppelganger is a fun game. Yep, it's actually it. That'd be awesome. That'd be like, I missed the doppelganger. Doppelganger's like, it's been me all along. I've been serving on hors d'oeuvres. I'm like, damn it. I knew it was you. Zamar says, remember, your honor will always show, whether on your skin or your heart. Ooh. I love that. I love that saying. Maybe the doppelganger is on purpose. Maybe is literally testing the honor of the people that are there to make sure that they know who and what they are, or they are literally a spy, but they're not violent. They're just going. They're just in court, and everybody knows it. But anyway, guys, have a great one. I will see thee later.